Welcome to the Save What You Love podcast. I'm your host, Mark Titus. Today I sit down with Alison Fox. Alison is the CEO of American Prairie, a nonprofit working for the restoration of 3.5 million acres of prairie in Montana. She's led the organization as CEO since February 2018, and Ms. Fox holds an MBA from the McDonough School of Business at Georgetown University and a BA in history from Dartmouth College. She's a member of the Big Sky chapter of the Young Presidents Organization and the advisory board of William and Mary's Institute for Integrative Conservation. Alison and American Prairie have been featured in many publications and productions, including National Geographic, the BBC, PBS, and on 60 Minutes on CBS. Today we talk about tough conversations with our neighbors, making a place at the long table for folks who see the world differently, buffalo as keystone species of the prairie, staying in the long game with a big vision, and other topics. I had a ball and learned so much in this interview with Alison, and I hope you enjoyed as much as I do. Thanks so much for being a cherished listener of this podcast, and we'll see you down the trail.
How do you say what you love when the world is burning down? How do you say what you love when pushes come to shove? How do you say what you love when things are upside down? How do you say what you love when times are getting tough?
Alison Fox, welcome. Where are you joining us from today?
I am in our offices in Bozeman, Montana today. Snowy Bozeman, Montana.
Snowy, beautiful.
Finally.
Are you ready for that snow?
I am ready for it. We've had an incredible fall here in Montana, a long extended fall, and it is time. It is time to replenish our waterways with some good snowpack. So hopefully it'll start coming a bit heavier than it has been for the last few months.
Oh, well, good. I'm crossing my fingers for you, and that it just paints a beautiful Montana scene, just like Yellowstone, I'm sure.
I haven't seen it.
Okay. Probably best.
Truly, I've never seen it.
Probably for the best. Yes. Well, look, I love doing this show because it's a long format and it allows us to kind of just meander like a stream or a river and go into things. And I'm just going to start in that vein and tell us your story. How did you come into this work about protecting the things that you love?
Yeah, I'll try a shorter version, but it may be a long version. It may be meandering.
It can go as long as you want. That's the beauty of it.
Because I think at this stage in my career, it's something I've reflected on, and this story, and I think everyone does this. How do all these threads tie together? So at the root of it, I grew up in a rural area. I grew up in a town of about 1,000 people, 1,200 people in Vermont. So I was outside a lot as a kid. I was out in nature. I was, exploring streams and finding newts and hiking with my family and spending time on the Connecticut River. So the nature and outdoor places have always been really important to me. I spent the summer between my junior and senior years of college working in Glacier National Park, and actually met the man who's now my husband on the top of the Going to the Sun Road, and fell in love with Montana and fell in love with big open landscapes and public lands. I mean, I grew up between the White Mountains and the Green Mountains in New England, so I certainly was familiar with public lands, but there's nothing like what we have in the West, of course, right? So that summer in Glacier changed my trajectory, and I moved to Montana after I graduated from college. I worked for a software company for a couple of years, and then went to business school. And coming out of business school, what I knew I wanted to do was do work that was meaningful and close to my personal values. And and when I put all these threads together, it's not surprising that ended up being in conservation, even though I'm a history major with an MBA. My husband and I spent our honeymoon backpacking through wilderness areas in all 11 Western states. We about 20 to 25 wilderness areas over a 4-month period. So again, big, open, wild landscapes from the Lost Coast of California to desert canyons to the North Cascades, the portion of the North Cascades that's wilderness. So when we moved back to Bozeman and the opportunity to work for American Prairie came before me, it was natural, right? I didn't have a background in conservation biology or ecology. I didn't really even know the prairie landscape, but this idea of working on a public-private lands project, a big ecosystem scale conservation project that honors that landscape's past and charts a future that takes into account that past and protects this really misunderstood and maybe underappreciated landscape that was a really appealing thing. So that's how I ended up at American Prairie 17 years ago, like
Wow.
maybe today. It was late
Wow.
November of 2007 when I joined the organization. So
Well,
a long time
congratulations.
ago.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love the willingness to step out and go to a place like Glacier and stand there and open yourself up to what the universe may have in store for you. I was recently talking to a friend out at the Elwha River for my current documentary, The Turn, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, I'm leaving, exploring new things, and I'm leaving my home here, and I have some reservations about it." And I was thinking, and I said, uh, "Do that. I mean that's the classic journey, right? Going out, discovering, and little do you know, what in my case it was going to work in a processor up in Alaska, and exactly that brought me to doing the work that I'm doing around salmon. So you just never know where it's going to open the door. I think that's wonderful.
Yes, absolutely. I
Well,
think my late mother knew that I had fallen in love not just with this boy in Glacier, but with Montana. Because very early in my time in Montana, she'd say, "You found such a nice place to settle down." And I think,
mm,
I'm not settled yet. I'm 22 and I have a rental apartment and everything I own still fits in my car. But she knew that this place had captured my heart.
yeah, same. All the people around me knew the same thing about Alaska and our waters here. But I I'm going down a pathway here that I want to loop back to. What are you doing at American Prairies? Like, what is this great, big, beautiful dream that is unfolding and manifesting, and you being a part of it?
Yeah. It's in part a reality, right? It's nearly 500,000 acres next to an existing 1 million acre wildlife refuge in terms of the reality. But the vision
Mhm.
is to restore and open to the public, open for education, recreation, a kind of great grassland park, but to do so using a different model than has been used in this country in the past. And that is a model of acquiring private lands in order to link together existing public lands. So temperate grasslands are the least protected and most threatened biome worldwide. They tend to be the places we've plowed and settled, and we've wiped the fauna off of them, globally, right? Among temperate grasslands, there are 4 places left where, according to IUCN, you could restore full functionality to the ecosystem, and one of those places in the Northern Great Plains. So if you look at our existing public lands, public parks, protected areas, whether they be national parks or wildlife refuges, there really isn't anything big on the grasslands other than the Charlie Russell National Wildlife Refuge around which we are working. So that's the goal. The goal is to assemble eventually 3.2 million acres or 5,000 square miles of public and private land, and to manage it in cooperation with the public land agencies, various public land agencies, both at the state and federal level, that own land in this region of Montana, and ensure that all the species that once called the place home are home again, welcome back not just that diversity, but the abundance that was once this place that once characterized this place, to do so in a way where local communities see benefit and experience benefit, and visitors from around the world can come and see a grassland ecosystem. So we're about 23-year-old nonprofit organization, founded in 2001. And we've now, as I mentioned, assembled about 500,000 acres of public and private land next to the Charlie Russell National Wildlife Refuge, which is along the Missouri River, and is the steep Missouri River breaks country down to those river bottoms. So that's the vision. That's the big vision.
It's astonishing work. As you correctly say, it's not just the vision, it's the action that has been done and is unfolding right now. And it, thank you. I'm just astonished, honestly. Like, that is such a tremendous amount of work. And
A big team. It's a really big team.
I have no doubt. I have no doubt. And for something this big, what's the importance of the 3.2 million acres number? Why is that an important part of this?
Yeah, valid question. 3.2 million acres is 5,000 square miles, and
Mhm.
that's the size that conservation biologists say you would need for a fully functioning ecosystem. So for predator-prey relationships, for the migrations to occur, for natural processes like fire on the landscape, to have that, to play that historic role. So is 3 million failure? Is 3.5 million overachieving? No, but somewhere in that 5,000 square mile range is what we're looking for. So that means American Prairie is assembling 2 million acres of public and private lands on either side of the Charlie Russell National Wildlife Refuge.
And you're close to 500,000 at this point.
Of that 2 million acre target.
Incredible. That's just
After about
incredible.
43 transactions.
Wow. Wow. I have so many questions, but
Ask away.
okay. I understand the word save has controversial and loaded interpretations in your work, and I understand why. But it is the title of this podcast, and I think in my own mind, not like as an assignment of blame on any particular group of people, as in we got to save it from those particular people, but more in my case, I'm speaking for, this show and the work I do, but more as a call to save or set aside sacred and enduring places, beings, and necessary ideas of wildness for future generations. How do you balance the need for sensitivity in the communication of your mission without losing the intensity of vision necessary to pull off something as audacious as protecting 3.5 million acres of wildlands?
Timely. We have a brand new communications manager who started earlier this week, and I had met her as part of the interview process. And so we just sat down together and we were talking about this very topic, and how the word save got us in trouble as an organization, honestly, and was, I think, so I'll sort of offer offer my perspective and why and how we use the word, and
Mhm.
the nerve that it understandably touched. I
Mhm.
think in some of the communities in which we work. I think we use save a lot in the conservation community. Save the redwoods, save the rainforest. They're just we do, and what we mean is exactly what you say. To protect, to cherish, to recognize the value, to recognize the uniqueness, the specialness of that place, and maybe above all else to sort of profess our affection, right?
Nice.
For the
Nice.
species, or
Mhm.
right, for the species or the ecosystem we're talking about. And so we had done just an annual fund marketing effort a number of years ago, almost a dozen years, almost a decade ago, probably. It was Save the Prairie or Save an Ecosystem, I think it was. And understandably, the pushback we got was save from who? Like, save from what? Like, this isn't threatened. And that's a fair that's fair, and that was not our intention at all, but to offend anyone. But that a fair statement, because I would say that one of the reasons that we are working in a particular region where we are working is because it's been really well stewarded and it's mostly intact native prairie. It has not been plowed. It's been grazed, but grazed responsibly. And so there's a lot of intact grasslands. That's why it's one of these four places where you can, where ecosystem scale restoration is still possible, because it's a lot of ground in really, really good shape. So the the reaction to this campaign was a community group called Save the Cowboy, Stop American Prairie. So sort of a formal opposition to American Prairie. And I would say that makes things way too black and white too, right? We're not, we have no opposition to the cowboy, no opposition to the cow, no opposition to agriculture. What we are doing in American Prairie is creating a place on our private lands that we are acquiring in the private markets, where eventually the goal is full biodiversity, right? Full biodiversity and full, public access and recreation. So we have a number of different ways we work with the agricultural community. I'm happy to talk about, but I think the root of what you maybe were getting at is just those challenges in communications of being really thoughtful about the words you use, and recognizing that a lot of these conservation challenges and solutions are complicated, and you can take shortcuts with words that have unintended consequences.
Yeah. First blush seems like an overreaction. Digging into it and empathizing, I can understand, really. And I think this leads beautifully into my next question here for you. You may have noticed we just had an election. My take on the results, in part, are that many people who feel as though they have not been heard in the discourse of American politics have just been heard at the polls. And many of these folks come from rural areas, the exact demographic of your neighbors in Montana. What are the ways in which you're creating space for folks at the big, long table of your work? In other words, how do you address the fears and concerns ranchers have about becoming displaced or obsolete in the American Prairie?
Yeah, good question. I'll steer well clear of the politics, but that wasn't what you were asking about.
No.
So, American Prairie for a long time was really a startup, and we were raising money all across the country to buy land, and we certainly developed relationships with our across the fence neighbors. But we have the polling data in Montana. We are not that well known statewide, right? And even in the counties we work, we're not well known, and we're not the sort of complexity of what we stand for and do is not terribly well known. And so about 6 years ago, there was a joint resolution that came out of our state legislature opposing a grazing change of use that we had requested from cows to bison on one of our parcels. And it was kind of a wake-up call, like, okay, wow, people are we knew that bison are not that are a controversial animal. That wasn't the news, but sort of the amount of misinformation about American Prairie in the state, lack of information and misinformation, in the void that we had created by not paying attention, honestly, was larger than I think we realized. And so we've taken a number of steps as an organization in the last 6 years to be more present and more transparent, more communicative, and to listen. And so I can give you some examples of those, but I guess the overarching message is we see that we contributed creating a bit of a vacuum of information. So we, couple of examples. We now have a Montana advisory board made up primarily of citizens of the 7 counties within which we own land. And we meet with that advisory board a couple of times a year. We get feedback from them. It's made up of some of our indigenous neighbors, community members, business people in communities, ranchers, sportsmen, right, lots of different people in the communities and really leaders in their counties. We opened a facility in 2021 in Lewistown called our National Discovery Center.
Mm.
It was, even though we were owned and leased a couple 100,000 acres, there was really no place where people could come and meet someone who worked for American Prairie, and get a map and just learn how they could visit, get their questions answered. And so
Mm.
in 2018, we purchased a big historic building on Main Street in Lewistown, Montana, which is our main sort of main gateway community. And this was a 120-year-old building that had served as a mercantile or a department store for its entire history. So very public community facing property. And we turned that into what we call our National Discovery Center. And it has
Nice.
a exhibit hall in it. It has a children's area, it has a theater, has our offices. It's the headquarters for all of our staff that are based in Lewistown. And it has a community room, essentially, like an event center. And so we host events there. It's open to the public now 3 days a week, and it's really created that storefront, that downtown presence where people can come and learn more about our mission. And the programming that we have there is not all just related to American Prairie. We've hosted tribal buffalo gatherings. We've hosted different conservation organizations that are having their statewide retreat there. We have hosted guest speakers. We have musical events. We have historians who come and speak at this facility. So I think we are creating a real asset for Lewistown, Central Montana with this place. We've also built some infrastructure out on our lands that is rentable and open to the public. So we have a system of 3, soon to be 4 huts, backcountry huts, kind of like Forest Service cabins, much nicer than Forest Service cabins that you can rent.
Mhm.
We have 2 campgrounds, and we've got about 6,000 overnight visitors per year now.
Wow.
Most of those are Montanans,
Mm.
especially with the huts. Most of them are Montanans. But and then we are all of our land is open. Our private lands are open, and you can cross our private lands to get to public lands. And so we're also one of the top 10 participants in the block management program, which is many of your listeners, I'm sure, are familiar with, but is Montana's public hunting program that opens up private lands to the public. And so
Wow.
we enroll about 80,000 acres this year. We've enrolled about 80,000 acres in that program. So we've got thousands of hunter days too. We've got bird watchers. We got families coming out. People are floating the Judith and the Missouri rivers through and by our properties. So really laid out that welcome mat to people to come and explore a landscape that even a lot of Montanans hadn't been to. And during the COVID years, wow, we saw huge spikes
Oh, I'll bet.
in use of those facilities. We've also started education programs. So that's the last thing I'll mention. We've got a American Prairie Field School that targets Montana schools with an overnight program, especially targeted at Montana middle schools. So it's just all prairie ecology education, essentially.
That, that's incredible. And I'd like to come visit. And boy, it would be great to do a screening of The Turn when it's out in 2026. We're going to do a 50 town national tour of the
Oh
film, and
yeah.
that would be just lovely. And because, in part, because this leads into where I'm going here, we're going to be talking about the Snake River and breaching the lower 4 Snake River dams, uh, which many folks believe, certainly the science is conclusive that that is the best possible solution to keeping salmon around.
Mhm.
And most folks here in the Northwest believe salmon should stay around. But that means that there's some really hard and seemingly intractable problems, but they're not. They can be solved, but it's delicate and it also needs to be robust at the same time. And I wonder what in your world when um, you're in relationship with your neighbors and the ranchers who are there who are afraid, and frankly, what I hear is that they're suggesting that if American Prairie completes its goal, maybe they won't be here anymore. Maybe their way of life won't be here anymore. What is what's the answer to that? Is there it's that's a complex problem, and I know it's not a simple sound bite, but what is the thinking on that when folks are nervous about their multi-generational way of life, eh, which though I might temper with has been here for, i- up to 150, 200 years total. Um, what is that what does that look like when you're trying to deal delicately but also robustly with the vision here and the work that you're trying to do, which is wonderful work.
Yeah, I guess I try to create a little perspective. I start with we're buying land from willing sellers. We're buying land from people who have decided to put their properties on the market,
Hmm.
whether they list them or they just give us a call. And so nothing other than willing buyer, willing seller transactions occurring. I'd also like to put that, 2 million acres, American Prairie is talking about next to an existing million acre wildlife refuge.
Hmm.
Montana's 93 million acres.
Mm.
That's the size of the state of Montana. So 3 million acres is enormous. It is the size of Yellowstone and Glacier combined. It is a big place, but when you think about American Prairie's bison herd, we've got about 900 animals now. We might have something in the thousands, right? Eventually. There are a 500,000 head of cattle in the 7 county region in which we work. So agriculture is not going anywhere in our area. It is the dominant ranching in particular.
Hmm.
It's a dominant industry, and so um, I try to steer the conversation away from this sort of total black and white because it's not black and white. I think the
Right.
other thing is um, American Prairie right now, our lands are kind of in 12 major units. We have bison on 2 of them. So we have bison on 10% of our holdings right now. We'd love to have bison on more, but we only create new herds when we can put them on larger landscapes. It doesn't make sense for us to have, from a management perspective or from an ecological perspective, like a whole bunch of little herds.
Hmm.
So 90% of our lands are leased out uh, to ranchers
Mm.
for cattle production. Sometimes that's through a lease back arrangement from the person who sold to us is leasing back to us, and that helps their family um, make that decision or make that transition, that intergenerational transfer sometimes. And others are just community members, and our leases have wildlife friendly standards on them, and they're conservation leases. And we work with those lessees to ensure that habitat is well taken care of. But the the idea that it's all bison all the time everywhere is not the reality. And I guess I would also say that our bison have a significant positive impact on the area. They are, of course, all the ecological benefits of bison that well, that bison is a keystone species on this landscape, but they're fun to visit, they're fun to see, and we even have create some harvest opportunities every year for the public that are
Mm.
wildly popular. So
Wow.
um so I guess those are sort of the things that it's not American Prairie or agriculture in central Montana.
Great. Thank you. I know it's a hard topic, and I appreciate you delving into it. You mentioned 43 transactions to date.
Mhm.
Who makes an ideal partner, and what are you looking for in folks? And maybe there's organizations involved, but what what does that look like? Who usually is coming to you, and how do those things usually come about?
Um, they're all they're all different, of course.
Mm,
But we are typically buying land from a private individual,
okay.
a family, or in a couple of cases, like groups of individuals who owned a property together. Sometimes those are families that have been on the property for a couple of generations. Sometimes they lived somewhere else and bought it. Some of them have been more hunting properties that an
Mm,
out-of-state buyer has owned that owned for elk hunting for some period of time. So they're all different, and as long as we can come to agreement on price, which has to be very, very close to appraised value,
mhm,
because as a nonprofit, we have to pay appraised value. Essentially,
mm,
we have to get independent appraisals, and that's an important part of maintaining our 501(c)(3) status. So,
sure.
so yeah, I think as long as we can come to terms on the property and it's in it, we've evaluated it and it meets the ecological criteria we're looking for and the location that we're looking for. We try to get to a deal. And as I mentioned, in some cases, that means that that owner is leasing back from us for some period of time.
Sure. Are those folks usually on board with the big mission, or is it more of a transactional piece, or is it just all the way across the board? Does it just goes transaction by transaction?
Transaction by transaction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. That's
Transaction by
fair.
transaction. I mean, some are agnostics. Some
Yeah.
probably wish that we weren't the buyer.
Mm,
Some, we are working with a family now that has leased back to us for a dozen years and will continue to lease back. And we have we have a great relationship. And I think, they're supportive of what we're doing. So I think it's all over the board.
that's okay. Fair enough.
But I
Uh,
think above all else, I think they think they're treated fairly by American Prairie, and
yeah,
that's really important for us.
that seems to be the case with what I've looked at too, in the research behind this. Halftime. Did you know you could have the world's finest wild salmon shipped directly to your door? It's true. Our Ava's Wild Bristol Bay sockeye salmon is the lowest carbon footprint center plate protein on the planet, and it's packed with heart-healthy omega-3 fatty acids. Don't take our word for it. Ask chefs like Seattle's Tom Douglas and Taichi Kitamura, who are serving our sashimi-grade wild salmon in their award-winning restaurants. You can have the exact same fillets we deliver to them, shipped flash frozen to your door. What's more, Ava's Wild donates 10% of our profits to Indigenous-led efforts to protect Bristol Bay in perpetuity. That's the place we source the salmon from. Right now, that looks like supporting the Bristol Bay Foundation, granting Bristol Bay's Indigenous young people scholarships to four-year colleges, universities, and trade schools. Visit avaswild.com to join our growing community doing good by eating right. That's save, spelled backwards, wild.com, and eat wild to save wild. Now, back to the show. I want to, you mentioned this earlier, but I want to emphasize and just call it out in a clear light of day here that uh, the public has access to these lands, right? This is not, you're locking it up and no one gets to step foot on it anymore. Uh, that is novel and excellent. And can you tell me a little bit more about the folks who might be able to use this land and what they use it for? You mentioned, wildly popular um, buffalo harvest event. I suppose there's probably other hunters, and maybe just paint us a little picture about the folks that are interested in using the land and being guests on the land and what their attitudes are about that.
Yeah, so it is a wild, wild place.
Mm,
And our promise is that it will be wilder each time you visit. So it is remote and big and open, and you are very much at the elements on this landscape, whether it's, 110 degrees in the summer and a rainstorm's going to come through that will make the roads impassable because they're gumbo, or
oh wow.
it's, 40 below in the winter. And so
Mm.
I'm really selling it. Come visit. Doesn't that sound great?
Yeah,
Um,
I can
but
see the flyer. Yeah.
yeah. So, the people, there's no entrance gate. There's no place where, people can, it's not a handheld experience, right?
Mhm.
It's people who have a four-wheel drive high clearance vehicle and are, probably recreating on other big chunks of public lands, and they want a new adventure.
Mhm.
And so I think that's just important to know. We do have, we use the Avenza app, and we have maps, and we have paper maps, and we can give people general guidance, but it's a very remote experience, and that's its charm, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's what's incredible about it. I think the other thing about the prairie that I love to emphasize is we haven't built any trails. We have one little interpretive trail at one of our campgrounds, but you don't need trails. You can just set out with Onyx or Avenza or good GPS and follow a two-track road and explore, right? And I'm just going to go see what's over there, 5 coulees away. So that sense of kind of just land snorkeling is what one of our
Hmm.
Emeritus board members calls it,
Cool.
is one of the coolest things about the prairie. So to characterize our visitors right now, certainly we do have a lot of hunters, and I mentioned that before. This area, particularly Missouri River Breaks, is prized by hunters, and the prairie too. For bird hunting and ungulates for sure. Each of our properties that we enroll in block management, we have a team within the organization that sets those hunting policies every year, and we're going for quality hunt over quantity. And so limited number of hunter days, parties per day on those properties. And if there are species and we restrict species if that's a recommendation of our team. So we took
Mm.
mule deer hunting. Mule deer have been hit really hard. We took that out of the number of properties this year. So lots of people going out and hunting these lands, and in some cases hunting lands that they haven't had access to in generations, and we get a lot of really positive feedback for that. Our backcountry huts are all you could drive to all of them, but they're all on kind of dirt and they're all on pretty rugged roads. But those sleep 8 to 9 people a piece. One of them is along the banks of the Missouri River. One is on a bench kind of up above the Missouri River, and the other is in right outside of next to a cottonwood grove along the Judith River.
Mm.
So they're just spectacular
I bet.
locations. They're
Wow.
dry, but they have kitchens, and so that I think a lot of families, groups of friends use those. They're bringing their bikes. They might be bringing horses. They're hiking or land snorkeling from there. They might be fishing on the Judith River. They might be bird using those as a base for bird watching, other wildlife watching. And then we have two campgrounds. One is in our Buffalo, on the property that has bison on it. That's 50 miles on gravel road from the highway.
Wow.
So very remote, but bison are wandering through by your tent platform. So that's a very cool spot. And then we have a campground that is along 191, which is the main north-south paved highway through the area that I'm describing. And that has some cabins and a bathhouse and RV sites and tent sites and an interpretive trail. And that's a bit more uh, accessible, definitely more accessible in all weather. And at that camper in particular, we see people, it's about half Montanans, half people from other states. And so that maybe is a little bit more of like the road trippers destination. Our director of public access calls in recreation describes our green square, our green circle, blue square, black diamond sort of experiences.
Got it.
But
That makes
that one in particular, that one, yeah, is very accessible to people kind of, with a camper who might be coming through. So
makes sense.
yeah, lots of different types of recreation, but everyone's out there enjoying really, really big skies, really quiet landscapes, and and the sound of the meadowlarks at 4 in the morning.
Wow. What a picture you're painting. And I love land snorkeling. That makes perfect sense to me, as do the skiing markers. That makes perfect sense. The thing I love to do almost more than anything these days is get in a river and river snorkel, take my nephews and
Mm.
nieces for the same, I think, vision that you're talking about there. It's quiet, you're slowing down, you're being present, you're coming into a space as opposed to exerting your will on it and trying to manipulate it. You're the visitor. You're in relationship with it, and that makes perfect sense to me as a way to experience the land. It's serene and it's quiet, and you're calming yourself down out of and transitioning out of this crazy busy world that we have constructed for ourselves. Speaking of busy, I'm curious about the day-to-day operations of American Prairie. You've got dozens of people that work for the organization. I bet it's a tough job, but I also bet it's a rewarding assignment as being the CEO of this org. Can you tell me a little bit about what you all do?
Yeah, sure. It's never boring.
I'm sure that's true. Yeah.
I feel very lucky to come to work every day and feel challenged and find our work exhilarating. So you're right. We have right now about 57 employees. They're
Mhm.
not all full time, but 57 employees. Vast majority are here in Montana, and they wear a lot of different hats. So our conservation division is the biggest division. They oversee all of the field programs, all of the infrastructure, all of those acres, the bison herd, all of the habitat restoration activities, the rewilding activities that are occurring on the ground. That team this week is in the middle of our annual bison roundup and handling. So they're running
Wow.
a couple hundred bison through our handling facility, through the squeeze chutes, getting blood samples, checking for disease, getting those blood samples for genetics as well. Some of those bison will be distributed to other conservation herds because we're also, of course, paying attention to carrying capacity on each of these properties that have bison. So a huge today, Thursday, November 21st, a huge portion of our team is up there on one of our properties doing this multi-day bison handling. So our team is kind of broken into four divisions. We've got, of course, fundraising, the philanthropy division,
Sure.
operations and finance, external relations and marketing, and the conservation division. And so you could work at American Prairie and be the manager of the bison herd. You could be a director of community outreach. You could be a gift officer wearing a philanthropy hat out meeting with people all around the country. So yeah, very, big set of different jobs. We
Yeah.
have I, a team. Most of our team now is either living on our properties or living in Lewistown. We do have an office in Bozeman as well. Most of us here in Bozeman are traveling quite a bit around the country, and kind of those back office functions are here. We have a national board of directors of 19 people
Wow.
who are from all over, who help govern the organization. And as I mentioned, an emeritus board as well, and a Montana advisory board. So it's not, and then thousands and thousands of donors. So it's a big group. We also have a number of collaborators and partners, Smithsonian's Conservation Biology Institute, the National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute, their main science partner. And they have 8 full-time staff now working here in Montana on their Great Plains Science Program, working on American Prairie's lands, but also working with a lot of different collaborators in the region on science projects and some species reintroduction efforts too, like the Swift Fox project that they led with the Ani and Nakota community on Fort Belknap. So they're kind of everywhere in the northern Great Plains, or this particular part of the northern Great Plains in Montana.
You piqued my interest. I got to ask, Sweatbox Project.
Swift Fox. I don't know what that would be, but let's talk about Swift Fox.
Wow.
Talking too fast again. Swift Fox.
No.
The Swift Fox. Do you know Swift Fox?
I don't. Please
Okay.
elucidate. Yeah.
Swift Fox are
that's
a little
me.
fox.
That's like getting old. Yeah. Wow.
They're a little fox about the size of a house cat.
Okay.
That are endemic to the Great Plains. They were eradicated from our particular area of central Montana, mostly by poisoning campaigns that were targeted at other species, not at them. But Smithsonian and the tribes at Fort Belknap have led this 5-year reintroduction effort where they've taken swift fox from other states, plain states that have healthy populations, Colorado and Wyoming, and translocated them to Fort Belknap and put collars on them to track their movements and release them from there. So they're denning and reproducing now, and we have these cool maps of the swift fox going all over the place and all over the reservation, but also off reservation too.
That's so great.
So one of the few species that kind of truly missing from our area.
Wow. Well, look, this is just flowing just like a river, right into the next thought I had, which was obviously there's a lot of challenges, and you can talk about those too more if you like. But what have your greatest moments of joy looked like for the work and the mission of American Prairie during your tenure?
Well, that's a really nice question. I've had some incredible experiences on the landscape. Obviously, I've spent a lot of time out there, both when I'm working and personally. I have 2 not so little boys anymore who are now in middle school, but we've spent a lot of family time out there. But one story I will tell, early in my tenure at American Prairie, I was out with a National Geographic film crew scouting. They ultimately made an hour-long, their natural history unit made an hour-long film called American Serengeti about American Prairie's efforts.
I remember that.
And we were out there in February. This is not in the film. And we were scouting, and we were driving south of the first property American Prairie bought into the Charlie Russell. It was a February day, like bright blue sky, really snowy prairie. It was just me and the filmmaker and our ranch manager at the time. And the ranch manager was driving, and along this snowy road were all of these hoof prints, like so many hoof prints. And I was still pretty new. And so I said, "Bill, what's that?" He's like, "This is going to be incredible. This is something only the old timers talk about." Wow. And he knew what we were going to see. And so he sped up, and we basically got to a high point, and we saw he estimated 600 to 800 migrating pronghorn stretched out over a mile across the snow-covered prairie. Wow. Of course, the filmmaker did not have his camera, but we just all stood there like, just transfixed by this experience. So that was amazing. And that, the next winter actually was a really, really hard winter on that pronghorn population. But I think I may be unique still on the American Prairie team and seeing that kind of a migration. Another on the sort of people side of what we do, I mentioned that we bought this building, this beautiful old stone building on Main Street in Lewistown to make into our Discovery Center. we ultimately pushed go on the construction of that in the middle of COVID. And it was it was hard. Like a lot of organizations, we'd cut our budget significantly. We completely reworked everything, but we had spent a couple of years raising the money. We had spent a couple of years um, designing, we're at the firm, but designing the exhibits, and we knew what we were building. We had the funds and the go ahead. But we had those moments of like, is this going to be, will people come to these kinds of spaces? And is this the
Yeah.
right time to do this project? Is this the right
Yeah.
use of resources at this time? And we ended up only opening maybe 4 months late, and we just plowed through and we persevered, and that facility is such a gem for us, as an organization, and it's such a treasure. So we didn't really have an opening because the time it wasn't a big grand ticker tape parade like we kind of hoped we'd have, but now 3 years later, you just sort of I reflect a lot on the value of that space, and the programs that we've created there, and the team that we've built there, and the relationships that they have in the community, and how the community feels about it, and that makes me really proud too.
Perseverance and truly sticking with that compass. We all had those thoughts during COVID, but at some point, we, as social beings, we're going to want to be together
Right.
again, right? And that, good for you. And it's beautiful. How does standing out there in that moment when you saw 600 to 800 pronghorns, how does that make you feel on the prairie? What is that? What's going on inside you in your heart when you're seeing something that is most people don't get to see and be a part of?
Small and inconsequential in the best ways. I mean, I feel that way anytime I'm out there, especially when I'm alone. I'm a runner, and
Mm,
so I've logged a lot of miles, solo miles running out there, and at lots of places, but on the prairie too. And whether it's like you know, coming down and crossing a stream and flushing a whole bunch of stuff out of the creek bottom, or there's one property that I particularly like to run on that we didn't have bison on for the first 10 or 12 years I worked for American Prairie. So I still sometimes, when I run into a bison, when I'm out there on the same, two track where I'm running, it catches me by surprise. It's really exhilarating to have them back there. Or you see, a couple coyotes heading off in the distance. And
mm.
so I like that, just like the perspective that gives you, that it's not just that disconnection from the day-to-day crazy, because I have a lot of day-to-day crazy in my
I'm
life, right?
sure that's true.
I have a
Yes.
lot of airplane rides and
Yes.
cities and all of that, but it's more just that reminder of what our place as humans is in these on this planet, in these places.
That's beautiful. We're going to start winding this down here, but we mentioned earlier about the buffalo being a keystone species, and I think most of our listeners know what that is. But just to hit it on the head, um, I didn't know this growing up, but buffalo or bison are symbiotic in relationship to the prairie. Uh, but why? What? And we don't need to drill into a PhD dissertation here on the biology behind this, but why is their presence actually good for the health of the prairie in general terms? A lot of folks that's some new stuff we're going to drop on them.
Yeah, and I'll take it up even a little bit higher.
Great.
It just Most of your listeners likely know this, but we once had 30 to 60 million bison in this country over almost the entire interior of the continent. And if you haven't watched Ken Burns' The American Buffalo, I highly, highly recommend it. So these prairies were shaped by these animals for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And of course, um, indigenous communities lived alongside them. And in terms of what they do for the prairie, a couple examples. Their grazing patterns are distinct. They will graze an area, and they graze in a really heterogeneous way. So they'll graze an area really hard. They'll not hit another area at all. And so for grassland birds, they have evolved for those different habitat types. And there are some birds that want, that grazed land and heavily grazed land, and some that rely on those higher grasses. Bison wallow on the prairie, and they create these little micro water habitats with their wallowing behavior. Obviously, bison in those numbers died on the prairie, and their carcasses were eaten by lots and lots of different animals that were coming through. So it's just they have shaped these prairies in a lot of different ways, and you can start to see their impact when they come back. They're also easier on waterways than other forms of livestock. They have evolved to handle the extremes of temperature that you see in the dryness of the landscape, but they don't have to go to water as frequently, and they don't stay close to that water. So those healthy or riparian habitats exist in where bison graze.
The shape of their hoofs are also.
They aerate the land. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was the first thing I learned about that. I was like, really?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yep.
just beautiful. Um, we're in a state of change always, whether as an organism or a community or a country or a species. And we are a part of a bigger thing. And I think that the nature of the work that a lot of us do to protect the things we love, it ebbs and flows in its complexity and its turbulence. And we may be in for a turbulent time ahead here. We'll see. Just don't know. It's hard to tell. But regardless of whatever those ebbs and flows are, there's a always, I think, an underlying drive uh, to do something for this thing that's bigger than us. I mean, it's kind of encapsulated in that moment when you're overlooking the prairie and seeing those pronghorns. What's that drive for you? How do you get out of bed every day and keep going and find the joy, find the intensity of longing that keeps us moving forward?
Uh, it's not a simple answer, I guess. It's a deep love for the landscape, deep love and respect for the landscape and all of its creatures, humans too. It's the people that I work with. We've got an incredible team, staff team, board team, donor community. Um, it's the complexity of American Prairie's overall mission. Um, the the way that my day goes from talking to a community member to figuring out the right ask of a donor
Mm-hmm.
to plotting out the next visitor facility we're going to open up
Mm.
and on the prairie. I think that and it's the tangibility of the progress. Like there's a lot that we get to, and we talk about this a bit internally. There's a lot that we can measure in our work beyond acres, beyond sort of acres with bison, but we're always in growth mode, and we're and that's really rewarding. There are a lot of moments we get to step back and say, "Wow, remember when we were happy when you know 10 people a year came out to visit, to visit our properties, and now it's thousands. So I'm not sure that that's a singular poetic answer, but all of those things are true, and what fuels my persistence and determination.
Well, it's important to celebrate as well as plan and to continue moving forward. And I'm guilty of plowing right over celebrations too. So it's wonderful to hear that. Are you hopeful? Are you hopeful for this work and what it can accomplish for the overall mission and also for all the people that are involved? I mean, it's a huge undertaking, and I'm so awestruck, honestly, by the scope of it. But it feels like, wow, this is so big. Are you hopeful for this work and what it can do?
Yeah, I am. I am. And I guess I would say I'm hopeful for grasslands. Like,
Yeah.
I've been with them, we are not at all the only game in town in terms of conservation organizations, you know, government organizations, tribal nations that care about grasslands and are working in some capacity to protect these grasslands. And grasslands globally are I don't know if having their day is quite, but there's more understanding of the importance of grasslands and the carbon that is sequestered in grasslands, and
Oh
the
yeah.
role that they play, not just for biodiversity, but in the face of the climate crisis. So yeah, I'm hopeful because even we never feel alone at American Prairie. There's it feels like a growing constituency and awareness for these places that we love.
Beautiful. I think we'll park it there, but you don't get away without being a part of the bonus round, which everybody has to get subjected to. But it's just a little thought game. It's not going to happen. But let's just say a prairie fire came up and you obviously got your loved ones and your critters out first. But if you could only grab one thing, if you only had time to grab one physical thing, what would that thing be?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean,
Kind of tough, huh?
it is tough. Yeah, yeah, it is tough. If I had my if I had my people, I'd probably be okay.
That's a fair answer.
Sorry, I can't really think of.
That's all right. I put you on the spot and for a reason, but grabbing your people is a totally fair answer. Let's just make it a little metaphysical. If you could only grab one trait that makes Allison, what would that one trait of you be that you could take with you?
Persistence.
That is well said from a CEO with a big vision and a lot of action to back it up. Alison Fox, thank you for your time here. I know you're so busy, and what a dream and what a manifestation that you get to be a part of. For folks that want to find out more, where can they get involved with, find out, contribute to your work?
Yeah, our website's a good place to start. AmericanPrairie.org. You can also find us on a whole number of social channels. But yeah, I'd love your support. We are expanding volunteer programs. Certainly, we're always looking for donors, and there's a very good sort of how-to guide to visit as well. And I hope you will visit. And we should talk about having your film at the National Discovery Center, because we'd be happy to entertain that idea. So.
Indeed. Well, but we will. Alison Fox, CEO of American Prairie, thank you for your time. Much appreciated, much admired, and we'll see you down the trail.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks.
How do you say what you love? How do you say what you love? How do you say How do you say what you love?
Thank you for listening to Save What You Love. If you like what you're hearing, you can help keep these conversations coming your way by giving us a rating on whatever platform you're listening from and leaving a comment on Apple Podcasts. It really helps get the word out. Check out photos on our Instagram feed. We're at Save What You Love Podcast, and you can get links from today's featured guest in the show notes of this episode. Join our growing community by subscribing to our newsletter at avaswild.com and then clicking on Connect in the upper corner. You'll get exclusive offers on wild salmon shipped to your door and notifications about upcoming guests and more great content on the way. That's at avaswild.com, the word save spelled backwards, wild.com. This episode was produced by Emily Fern and edited by Patrick Troll. Original music was created by Whiskey Class. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you all down the trail.